Wednesday, you know what that means. Time for the Southern California Writers Association Hump Day Book Tour. I'm your host, Maddie Margarita, here with Diana Pardee on tech. Every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m., the Southern California Writers Association turns our Facebook page over to a new, or in this case, returning author to talk about their books and their work. This morning, I'm pleased to welcome back Pat Spencer. Pat is the author of 2 novels, Story of a Stolen Girl and her latest, Golden Boxty in the Fry Pan. She enjoys meeting new people and learning about their culture and has lived in Canada, Germany, Florida, Colorado, Texas, Oregon, Mississippi, Virginia, California. The U.S. Marshals are looking for you still.
Yes.
Her short story, A Healing Place, won the 2019 Oceanside Literary Festival. Her short stories are published in online journals such as Literary Yard, Scarlet Leaf Review, and Potato Soup Journal. She authored a column in the Press Enterprise, published articles for a national trade magazine, and served as a columnist and contributing editor to the Inland Empire magazine. In her spare time, that's kind of funny. I threw that in, Pat. She speaks to community organizations on human trafficking and writing processes. To relax, she golfs, reads, walks the beach, or hangs with family or friends at frequent book clubs. Okay, well, God, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm pleased to be here.
Well, we're so excited about your new book. Do you want to talk about, let's start with the title and a little bit about it. And so, Golden Boxty in the Fry Pan.
Okay. Golden Boxty the title comes from the main character, Katie, who is inspired by my mother's experiences. Katie lives in Philadelphia in a poor Irish district, rundown tenement, and the neighborhood is so dangerous she can't go out to play. Only if a brother is around, and they're old enough that they're in school. So she's usually at home alone with mom. But she made one friend, Mrs. O'Shea, downstairs, and Mrs. O'Shea and Katie cook. And Mrs. O'Shea's theory in life is that whatever's going wrong, everything's going to look better if you've got golden boxty frying in the pan. And if you throw in an extra pat of butter, that really ensures that everything's going to be okay and you're going to have a great day. Everything will be solved. So the title comes from that. The book, as I said, is inspired by my mother's experiences. She had an interesting, complicated youth. She was very poor, as I think a lot of our parents were, really. We come from poor upbringing. She had a lot of loss in her family life, more than any young child should have to suffer. And there came a point, not just a couple years ago, where I wanted to start learning more about my Irish heritage. And I wanted to kind of reconnect with some of my cousins that are spread across the United States. And so I started looking into some genealogy and calling and emailing my cousins and gathering stories. And in addition to stories, I found out family secrets that sometimes only one cousin had a document that revealed something and the others hadn't. And so we ended up, sharing all of these things. So it's interesting because when I first started writing, when I would go to a signing where the work was based on the author's family, I was so jealous. I was thoroughly jealous because I thought my family, they were just a family that we didn't have anything worth, basing a story on, much less a whole book. So I would always say, oh gosh, I wish my family, had, we didn't have any mass murderers. Nobody went to prison. I was really, so, and
the horse thieves,
Yeah, and then when I started digging and the secrets started revealing themselves, I was like, okay, family.
There we go. So talk a little bit about the time that you decided to set the story in. It's in Philadelphia, but what's the year and?
It begins in 1929 when Katie, my mother, is 6 years old, and it goes through 1937. And they have quite an adventure. They're very poor, and the Irish were very much discriminated against in Philadelphia. She lived in an area called Swamp Poodle, and it was an Irish enclave, and they had low-paying jobs, and the extended family, the grandparents, were living with them, and still they're Irish, so there's, as you might expect, an alcohol problem. Yeah, so
The curse.
yeah, the curse. And grandmother got consumption, which they did not realize was, a calming name for tuberculosis at the time, but the doctor recommended that they move to either California or Colorado for the clean air or the sea air, whichever. And so they saved up, went on a glorious train trip, and ended up in Pueblo, Colorado, and the life was better. They were achieving the American dream to some extent. Things were going well, and then one thing after another went wrong, really wrong, and Katie ends up having to rise to the role of mother for her 4 youngest brothers, and take on responsibilities and duties that no child should ever have to. And ultimately, she has to rescue the boys. She has to, they're not safe. None of them are safe, but one brother in particular is really not safe. And she has to get them out. So she orchestrates the great escape for the 4 of them, and they outwit the nuns and the police, and off they go.
No, I understand outwitting the police. Hard to imagine outwitting the nuns. But listening to what you were saying, I think to a certain extent, children grew up much faster because they had to become functioning adults because the responsibilities of the family had to be spread around.
Yes.
But you did the research on the family part, which you were saying you're jealous. Okay, so I'm jealous of you for doing that. But when you were learning about Philadelphia and some of the, I think, experiences your mother had were in any of the East Coast where the Irish landed. New York had the same, Boston, Philadelphia, all of those cities. So when you were doing research about that time period, what were some of the things that you found out that surprised you or shocked you, or did you? I mean, this is kind of a historical, what would you call it? Historical fiction, right?
Historical fiction, yes.
Because it's not a biography.
No, it's not a biography. No. One of the reviewers, the Life Prize review, said that it read more like a memoir. But of course, I can't write my mother's memoir, but she said it kind of has that feel. But the research was interesting. I just kept digging and talking to people. And you're right about the condition of the Irish on the East Coast, wherever they landed on the East Coast. Conditions were rough. They were viewed as coming to take jobs of American citizens, and they came poor. This was not during the Great Famine in Irish, but people had not recovered from it. Families had lost their farms, their businesses, their leased land where they grew crops, and they came and they were really, really poor, and it was very difficult to get anything but menial labor. And even that, in researching, digging through library materials and online, finding work posters that would say things like basically they're looking for a cleaning woman or a gardener or something, and the bottom line would be no Irish need apply. And so it was difficult. Both men did get jobs with the the train station. So they were at least having a regular check. Unfortunately, they were both alcoholic and they drank up a great amount of the money. And so I was surprised at that. I mean, I've always known my family drank and they could drink a lot. And I never noticed that they acted that much different, even after, half a bottle of Irish whiskey. But as I dug in, I found out that alcoholism was a great problem. And I was very fortunate that my mother was not an alcoholic, and then just, then when they moved to Pueblo, when they got to Pueblo, then there is a rich amount of information at the Pueblo Museum. And I connected with a librarian at the museum and asked her questions, and she sent me a lot of materials of things that none of my cousins knew. I mean, even the dates that my uncle worked at the soda fountain at Cress's, and just some real priceless details. So that was fun, just having that link and that communication and just diving in. And it's amazing the information was out there. We got birth certificates, death certificates. We got a picture of a tombstone where an arm is buried in Pueblo, Orion arm. We don't know whose arm it is. We haven't found it. I know.
I'm trying to be respectful, but
I know.
that is funny.
Apparently back then, if you had an arm amputated, it was buried, and it is, but we don't even, none of us that are still living can think of anybody who had an arm amputated. So the arm is there. And I learned about two deaths of people who would have been one uncle and one aunt if they had lived. One a little boy who died within a year of birth, and then a little girl who died in 10 days that my mother never ever mentioned. That would have been her brothers and sisters. So there were 6 surviving. There would have been 8 with those 2.
I think that's a frequent story.
Yeah.
We had 5, and I found out later my mother had 4 miscarriages.
Yeah.
We would have been 9.
Yeah.
So, I'm curious, the pull of the Irish, the genetically encoded clanism that somehow we feel as American Irish, to Ireland, somehow is encoded in us. But I think the experience, I'm going to ask you, how do you think that the experience of your mother and the people that were immigrating at that time relate to the people who are immigrating to the U.S. today? Do you think there's similarities, connection? What do you think after writing from that perspective for a while?
I think there's a lot of similarities. When people come and you don't know who they are or what they are, and you assume they're here to take something away from you. I think we see that a lot now in the immigration, in the illegal and the legal immigration. There's a sense of unease, in some people, a sense of fear of these people because they're different. And I think that what I found in my family, that was very much, there was a discrimination, there was name calling, there was an inability to get jobs, to progress in those jobs. They didn't have advanced education. My relatives didn't have advanced education. Some got some college later on in their adult lives, but there was just a fear. They were different. And unlike some people that immigrate, the Irish tend to be kind of loud and out there. And the men like that tough guy. Not all of them. That's not fair to say, but there was this image of tough guys, rambling in the bar and, having bar fights and all of that, that kind of loud, boisterous people who like to sing over a beer, they were different and they were obvious, they weren't quiet and, they kind of put themselves out there. But I think that seems to be just innate in human beings to have fear of something that's new and something that might threaten your way of life.
So when you finished writing the book, this was a kind of a personal thing. Did you think about the readers and how you wanted readers to react when they read the book, or hope that they might react, or what kind of experience you wanted them to have when they read the book?
Yeah. One thing that I've always thought about is how some children actually grow up to be fairly normal people, given what they went through as children. And I really saw that in my family. They collectively, the 6 surviving siblings, I saw really clearly, one of the most important things was that the things that happened to them were not going to happen to their children. And most of my aunts and uncles had relatively small, normal sized families. One uncle has 8 children. But really that commitment that their children were going to have normal lives. They were not going to be hungry. They were going to go to school. They were
Have education.
They were going to have education. They were going to be prepared to go out in the world. They were going to know they were loved. They were, not that my family didn't fight, and they were all very strict disciplinarians, but there was still that family was number one. That was the most important thing. And taking care of your family was the ultimate goal with all of them.
So I think that whether you're Irish or not, you can relate to that. There are a lot of people who can relate to that experience, and a lot of the experiences that Katie and her brothers go through over the course of the book. Who do you think would enjoy the book? If you have an audience in mind, or, I mean, aside from maybe the obvious people like me who have similar Irish heritage, maybe some similar Irish upbringing, and you know the personalities and the ups and the downs, but who else do you think would enjoy the book?
I think people who enjoy coming of age books, where you see that growing up, that, you know, the facing of, the taking on, the failing at some things. I always think that more women than men will like what I write. So I've, even with Story of a Stolen Girl, and now is what I see, the feedback I'm getting on Golden Box Tea, I'm surprised by how men connect to it. And I think anyone that likes to see a satisfying ending, someone who relates to those who have had trials and tribulations, whether they're similar to anything you've gone through, we've all got stuff, you know, but who likes to see that triumph at the end. I think the age group is pretty widespread. My granddaughter, who's 19, has read quite a bit of it, and she is enjoying it. I think,
how great is that, Pat?
Yeah,
Really, to see that, you know.
Yeah. And I really, it's not being advertised as young adult, but I really think anybody that's like 13, 14 years old, there is some the Irish version of swearing in it, you know, but it's, you know, it is what it is.
Colorful.
Yeah, it's in dialogue, and it's just when they really said it. There's some sensitive topics. There's an illegal abortion. But I tried to present it in a way that it was their lives. You know, there's sensitive topics, some that we don't really like to talk about or think about, but presented in a way with an understanding that this was this person's life, and it's not something to be offended by or to be afraid of. It is what it was factually, and they overcame it. They weren't.
Well, I think that's, you know, I think it's a story of hope and redemption, and you know, that human nature can overcome the challenges and things that get thrown in your way, regardless of how old you are and where you come from. So I think that's a great way to end this. And I want to thank you for being here. So let's talk about where people can find Golden Box Tea in the Fry Pan.
Okay.
Where can people get their hands on that?
You can get the paperback from Walmart and Barnes and Noble online. You can get the ebook from Kobo and Barnes and Noble, and then Amazon, of course, the book, the book selling giant.
The BA.
Yes, the big A. Sometimes it is difficult to find the book in the search. And I just learned if you put a quote mark before the title, Golden Box Tea in the Fry Pan, it will go directly there. If you don't put the quote mark, it may or may not go directly there. You may just.
Is that one single quote mark in the beginning?
Yes,
Or
one single quote mark. No, you don't even have to close it. You don't have to use correct grammar. You just have to put one in the front.
So, you know, that's going to be hard for writers, but
I
think we
know.
can try.
Feel free to put it at the end if you really need to. Yeah, but without the quote mark, personally, I found I just end up with a bunch of frying pans of all, you know, black ones, gold ones, silver ones, Teflon ones, you know, so the quote mark seems to, and I think they'll work that out. You can get either the paperback or the ebook there. They're listed separately right now. That hasn't come together quite yet, but they're there. If you use that quote mark, you can find them.
Is there a recipe for box tea anywhere on a website or on a book or?
It is, if you go to my website, I've been sending out the recipe. If you go to my website, there's a little place where you can sign up and I will email you that recipe and a variety of other recipes over time I will send you Irish whiskey caramel thumbprint cookies and Irish Christmas cookies and Irish pudding, Christmas pudding, and
I want that brown bread recipe.
Oh, okay. I have a
So,
good freckle bread recipe too.
Right.
Really good freckle bread. So,
all right. So if anybody wants to bake something delicious and that they can eat while they're reading the book,
yes,
Pat has you taken care of all the way around in this reading experience. I hope that you'll take a few minutes, order the book or buy the book or attend one of Pat's local signings that are coming up and support her and also leave a review because authors love reviews. They're like that extra pat of butter in the frying pan.
exactly.
So if you could do that, that'd be great. Pat, thank you so much. And we will see you soon.
Thank you, Maddie.
And to everybody else, thank you for being here. If you enjoyed this interview with Pat, which I mean, honestly, how could you have not? You can share this on Facebook or you can go to SCWA Writers Online on YouTube and find Pat Spencer's interview as well as over 100 other interviews. So until next Wednesday, please stay safe and keep reading.